Okay, we just finished covering Apple's latest slew of products that they announced with an October press release with the new M2 iPad Pro, the updated iPad, which is just all sorts of strangeness. And hey, they even threw in an A15 equipped Apple TV and reduced the price point on that. And those were the products that Apple announced in October. I actually covered that event, or covered the rumors for that event, like 2 days before, and most of the rumors turned out to be pretty accurate, which is why I'm back to kind of tell you that Apple isn't finished yet. They are not finished releasing products, and even though we might not see any more products for this October, we will see new Macs in November with probably a very similar press release style announcement, and they got a couple more Macs to announce before the end of November, but there might actually be the possibility of an event. Maybe, if we're lucky. So, hey, new Macs, what can we expect for November? Well, listen, if you're expecting this to be like the most exciting Mac announcements ever, I would definitely temper down your expectations. I don't even know if that's the correct phrase, but we're going with it. Because listen, we can see from Apple's October press release kind of the products that they are announcing in this style aren't really the most exciting. Like when you take a look at the new M2 iPad Pro, there's like a couple new features thrown in, but really the main thing about that iPad Pro is they took out the M1 chip and they gave it a spec bump with the M2 chip. But I think we can expect a pretty straightforward update for these next Macs because, like it or not, they are mostly going to be spec bumps. And I think that really just starts out with a new version of the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Now, again, look at those MacBook Pros. The last time they were released, they got a major redesign. They got the smaller bezels all around the display. They got a notch. They got mini LED displays. They got more ports. They got a 1080p webcam. So going into a refresh of this, especially when they just did a major revamp of that product, do not expect this product to look different at all. Do not expect it to have a bunch of new hardware features. That is just not the cadence of Apple's update cycles. What we can expect for this product is a spec update. So Apple's gonna take the M1 Pro and the M1 Max chip and put in an M2 Pro and an M2 Max chip. Now, as for these chips themselves, they might not be as exciting as rumors from like a year ago might have indicated, because there was talks about Apple maybe going for a 3nm design with even more core counts on the CPU front and like just even more GPU core counts and making it even more efficient. But based on what we saw with the M2 chip, Apple is still keeping that on a 5nm process. And with the recent leaks surrounding the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips, it looks like Apple's also going to be keeping that on a 5nm process, which means we can pretty much kind of guess what this update is going to look like. So for the M2 Pro and M2 Max chip, we can still expect just a 10-core CPU design. But much like the M2 chip, even though it's keeping the same CPU core count overall, we can expect a performance jump anyway, because the M2 chip was basically more powerful on single core performance, so it was clocked higher, ran faster, and that's basically what's gonna happen with these chips. So we're gonna see probably the same single core scores as we see now with the M2 chip, and then because each individual core is now stronger, even though there aren't more processing cores, well, obviously, because each core is stronger, that's gonna mean that each of those cores is working harder, which leads to better multi-core performance as well. So we're going to see a jump in CPU performance on these new machines. But perhaps even more importantly, we are actually going to see probably a more significant GPU jump, because the M2 chip upgrade was kind of focused more around GPU, and there were actually GPU core count increases. So the M1 chip moved from a max 8 GPU core design to a 10 GPU core design. Current rumors for the M2 Pro say that the GPU core count's gonna move from a 16-core GPU all the way up to a 20-core GPU on the M2 Pro, and then on the M2 Max chip, you can basically double that for the Max configuration, so a 40-core GPU maxed out. But again, it's kind of like a minor update on the outward front of these new laptops. They're gonna look the same. They're gonna have the same mini LED displays, which are great, by the way. They're gonna have the same speakers. They're great, right? These are really good laptops. The main upgrade we're looking at here is a spec bump. But that's not the only Macs we can expect for a November press release. And while these new MacBook Pros might not be as exciting, for some reason, I am more excited about these next machines, and that is updated versions of the Mac Mini. Yes, multiple Mac Minis apparently. So first of all, the first Mac Mini spec bump apparently is gonna be pretty simple. And actually, technically both of them are gonna be pretty simple, but the first one is just gonna be that entry-level Mac Mini, the one that everyone raves about because it's so low cost, has great performance, doesn't make any noise with like the fan or anything. That is gonna get the same treatment as the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 chip, right? So the M1 chip inside of that machine is gonna be swapped out with an M2 chip. But from a value perspective, that could actually be pretty significant for the Mac Mini based on what we already know about the M2 chip. And that's because of the limitations of the M1, where that could only go up to 16 gigabytes of unified memory. So by Apple putting an M2 chip into that entry-level Mac Mini, that would now be able to be spec'd out with 24 gigabytes of unified memory. So I'm excited for that. But perhaps even more exciting is something that goes a little beyond that M2. Now that M2 is gonna still be really good for a lot of people, but again, some people just need a little bit more. And the next Mac we can expect out of that is, again, another Mac Mini, but this time equipped with even more powerful chip and more ports. So this is going to be an M2 Pro Mac Mini. Again, we already covered what the M2 Pro chip is gonna be, so basically consider that for a Mac Mini. But again, that is important because if the rumored specs are true, that's gonna mean even better CPU processing power, a big increase in GPU power over the regular Mac Mini. So if you have a moderate GPU workload, well, maybe you can't really use the Mac Mini, or maybe it's not the best machine for you, but maybe stepping up to that M2 Pro Mac Mini, that's gonna make all the difference. And then again, memory. Memory is so important for so many workflows. So if that M2 Pro chip can carry now 40 gigabytes of unified memory, well, that is going to be a significant increase for people that were looking at trying to get a lower end machine. Now again, like I mentioned before, I expect the price range of this to be pretty similar to what Apple sells the current Intel Mac Mini as. Like, yeah, they still sell an Intel Mac Mini. I think that's around like $1,099 for that. And I would expect this M2 Pro Mac Mini to kind of have a similar price point. Maybe if they bump up the minimum storage to like 512 gigabytes of storage, then we could probably expect like a $1,299 starting configuration for this Mac Mini. So that's pretty reasonable, right? Like a $1,299 M2 Pro Mac Mini, and then you can spec it up from there. I think that would be just a really good product in the Mac lineup, would help fill that gap between the entry-level Mac Mini and the Mac Studio. So we could probably expect more ports on this. So probably like 2 USB-A ports, 3 to 4 Thunderbolt ports, Ethernet gigabit built right into the M2 Pro Mac Mini. And yeah, that would just be a really compelling product. But what about other Macs? Because there is actually a really exciting Mac that was rumored for the end of the year. And of course, that is the new Mac Pro. This would be a whole new category for the Mac with Apple Silicon with that bigger desktop tower that they don't have yet in the Apple Silicon lineup. And I was kind of thinking that Apple would have like a dedicated November event because they would have this Mac Pro ready. But based on current rumors and based on what Mark Gurman is saying, and he has just been so accurate recently with his reports, he's basically saying that Apple is pushing out this M2 Extreme into next year, and they are just not ready to announce it. So I just want to give you like the accurate information right now. And apparently, if you were waiting for that Mac Pro in November, it doesn't look like it's coming. So that to me signals that there probably won't be a dedicated November event, but we can probably still expect the press release just like we got with this latest slew of iPads. So yeah, those are the Macs that are rumored for November. I don't know when the M2 iMac is going to come out. I guess maybe they could push that to spring. And then if they are doing the Mac Pro early 2023 as well, then I also think we would see updates to the Mac Studio, because the rumored starting chip for that Mac Pro is going to be an M2 Ultra. So when that comes out, then of course they could also update the Mac Studio as well. But yeah, those are all the latest rumors surrounding new Macs. So let me know in the comments below. Are you excited for any of these new Macs coming out in November, even though they are just kind of like a spec upgrade? Like, were you just waiting for M2 chips before you purchase this? Or are you waiting for a more significant update before you buy any new Mac hardware? As always, if you liked the video, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, thank you so much for watching, And hopefully I'll see you in November with some new Macs, right? We're gonna cover these Macs, so stick around to the channel. You know what to do. All right, take care. Have a good one.